True crime mysteries often follow the same narrative. A crime is committed, witnesses are interviewed, evidence is collected, and the culprit is ultimately arrested. But some solved cases follow different paths, with amazingly unexpected endings and unbelievable plot twists worthy of a best-selling crime novel. Number 5. Victoria Roth's unbelievable true crime case occurred in January of 2019 while she was staying at a hotel during a work trip. After completing their day's work, Victoria and a coworker named Rebecca returned to their hotel rooms. But as Victoria opened her bedroom door, she noticed that there was someone in the bathroom. She assumed that a housekeeper had let themselves in, but when she called out, she got no answer. Victoria then noticed that the woman in the bathroom was holding her bag with her belongings in her hands. She called out to Rebecca that there was someone in her room, and they confronted the woman, who told them that she had an old room key and she'd used it to gain entry. After checking the room and confirming that all of her electronics were still there, Victoria let the woman go. However, she noticed that some of her medication was missing, but the woman was long gone, and hotel staff called the police. Police looked around the room and took their statements. But when Victoria mentioned that there were little pieces of drywall on the sink in the bathroom, they didn't take much notice. The officers left the room, after which Victoria and Rebecca inspected the doors and windows to try to figure out how the woman had gotten in, since hotel staff were adamant that she couldn't have possibly had a working room key. And that's when she put two and two together and decided to look behind the bathroom mirror. As she removed it from the wall, they realized that it hid a hole just wide enough for a small person to crawl into. Inside the wall, they found pillows, cigarettes, blankets, clothes, and toothbrushes. It would then come to light that the woman had been living in the hotel's walls for some time, and that she had access to multiple rooms, since the holes in the walls had been left untouched after renovations were done. Needless to say, both Victoria and Rebecca packed their belongings and checked out immediately. Number 4. In 1964, the Beatles had found unprecedented fame, and people in South America were thrilled at an announcement that the band would be touring later that same year. But no one could have predicted that they would become associated with a true crime mystery. This came after an Argentinian man named Rudy Duclos saw the band perform in a club in Miami, and he decided to book them for the tour. Anticipation for their arrival was at such a fever pitch that two TV stations, Channel 9 and Channel 13, booked the band for the same night, which was of course unreasonable. Channel 9, however, had an enforceable contract, and it was all but decided that the band would appear on their channel. But Channel 13 had close ties to the authorities, and ultimately it was decided that they would be hosting the appearance that night. Not to be outdone, Alejandro Romay, Channel 9's chairman, contacted a popular wrestler and asked him to contact some of his fellow wrestlers who were tasked with kidnapping the band. Their plan went off flawlessly, and the band was locked up in a hotel room in the suburb of Palermo. When the time arrived for the band to appear on the channel's show, the Laughter Festival, they were taken to the station and told to get ready. But much to the dismay of those watching from the stands and viewers at home, there had been a terrible mix-up. The band that had been booked was actually a Beatles tribute band called The Beatles, spelled with 2 E's. And it would later come to light that Duclos, who had booked them for the tour, knew that they were a cover band but purposefully neglected to mention that fact to promoters and venues. Following the disastrous tour, the band struggled to get any radio airplay as they were seen as a parody of the real thing. They ultimately decided to revert to their original band name, The Razor's Edge, but by the end of the 1960s, the band had still not found success, and they decided to go their separate ways. Number 3. The true crime case involving Noella Recundo, a refugee who was living in Melbourne, Australia, started in 2004 when she met Balenga Kalala, who had also traveled to Australia after fleeing from a rebel army in Burundi. Noella and Kalala soon got to know each other, and before long they decided to get married after moving in together in the suburb of Kings Park. They went on to have 3 children, and at first everything seemed to be going well. But in 2015, Noella's stepmother passed away, and she traveled back to Burundi with Kalala to attend the funeral. After the service, she went back to her hotel room, feeling despondent, and decided to get into bed. Soon after doing so, she got a call from Kalala, who, upon hearing that she was upset, suggested that she step out for some fresh air. But as soon as she walked outside, she was confronted by a man with a firearm who blindfolded her and ushered her into a nearby vehicle where 2 more men were waiting. She was taken to a warehouse where she was tied to a chair, but amazingly, her kidnappers revealed that Kalala had hired them to end her life, as she was wrongly suspected of having cheated on him. At first, she was hesitant to believe the story, but they proved it by contacting Kalala and having him confirm the plans while on speakerphone. On the 19th of February, Noella's kidnappers dropped her off by the side of the road with an envelope containing evidence of her husband's guilt. Kalala had told their friends in Melbourne that Noella had passed away in a tragic accident and had made arrangements for her funeral. Noella traveled back to Australia on the 22nd of February and arrived at her house just as the last of the mourners were leaving. She stepped out of the car and confronted Kalala, who, upon realizing that she was still alive, started to plead for forgiveness. But Noella informed the police, who recorded a conversation between the two, in which Kalala once again begged for her to forgive him for taking a hit out on her life. Upon his arrest, he denied any involvement in the kidnapping, but after hearing the recording, he broke down and confessed. On the 11th of December 2015, Kalala was sentenced to serve 9 years behind bars. He'll be eligible for parole in 2022. Number 2. In the 1920s, a true crime case started to unfold involving a woman named Dali Österreich and her husband Fred. Fred was the owner of a Milwaukee-based apron factory, and due to his success, he worked long hours, much to the dismay of his wife. But for the next 4 years, they seemed like a happy couple, until Fred informed her that they would be moving to Los Angeles. Not long after finding a house and moving in, the neighbors reported to police that they'd heard a firearm being discharged inside the house. Upon their arrival, they found that Fred had been killed and Dolly was left locked in a closet. She told the police that a burglar had broken into the house and had ended Fred's life with the firearm before locking her in the closet and making off with their valuables. At first, they were skeptical of her account of robbery, but all the evidence seemed to corroborate her story and no culprit was identified. Dolly decided to move to a new house and she started a relationship with a man named Roy Klum. After being together for a while, Dolly showed him a firearm that she owned and asked him to get rid of it, as it closely resembled the one used in the robbery and she didn't want to get in trouble. He obliged and threw the weapon into the tar pits. She then approached her neighbor with the same explanation of another firearm and convinced him to bury it in his garden. But Dolly and Klum's relationship soon ran into trouble, and when she left him, he went to the police to tell them about the weapon. The weapon was retrieved from the tar pits, and soon Dolly's neighbors supplied police with the second firearm, sealing her fate. But unbelievably, it would come to light that Dolly hadn't in fact ended Fred's life. Police soon learned that she'd been having an affair with a former employee of the apron factory, a man named Otto Senhuber. While living in Milwaukee and Los Angeles, Dolly had kept Otto in their attic, and when he heard an argument between her and Fred, he emerged and ended Fred's life with the 2 weapons. Senhuber was found guilty of manslaughter, but he was soon released due to the statute of limitations having expired. Dolly also faced a trial, but she was acquitted and lived in Los Angeles until she passed away in 1961. Number 1. On the 22nd of June, 1991, factory worker Charles Holden had just finished his shift, and he stopped in at a fast food restaurant in Harrington, Delaware. He picked up his food at around midnight and headed back to his truck, where he was approached by a man who asked him for a ride to the hospital in Georgetown as his sister was in labor. Charles was hesitant at first, but he decided to help the man out. The man got into the truck, and after driving about 3 miles to the junction at the highway in Killen Pond, he informed the man that that was as far as he was going. This angered the passenger, who flew into a rage and started assaulting him. The man grabbed a screwdriver and threatened to use it on Charles, who jumped out of the vehicle and ran to a nearby store for help. But the man chased him down and threatened to end his life if he refused to take him where he needed to go. He agreed, but before the man could reach the truck's passenger side, Charles jumped behind the wheel and sped away, with the man chasing him for a short distance. He continued to his house, but to his surprise, he noticed the same man on a street near to his house, and he decided to drive around for a while so that the man couldn't figure out where he lived. He stopped at a payphone and called the police, waiting for them to arrive before driving home. Upon arriving at his house, police searched his property for the hitchhiker, but he wasn't found. They then checked Charles's mother, Dorothy's trailer, which was behind his house, and found that her life had been ended, and although the back window was shattered, there was no signs of a robbery. Suspicion fell on Charles, though he was soon cleared thanks to DNA evidence found at the scene. 14 years later, in 2005, the DNA from the crime scene proved that a man named Gilbert Cannon had committed the crime, and he was arrested. Police learned that he was simply looking for an abandoned property to sleep in, and randomly chose Dorothy's trailer, as he thought it was empty. He ended her life so that she couldn't identify him, and he admitted that he'd neither met either Charles or Dorothy before that night. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.